Hello. All right. We are live to take questions from inside the Millionaires Medicine Club. So let's dive in and do that. All right. We have had a big week this week. If you are a member of the Millionaires of Medicine Club, you know that we have been doing our end of Q1 5-day challenge, where we just basically challenge you to think through what you've been doing, what you could be doing, what your goals are you on track, all those things. So it's been a big week inside the club of people just sharing those kinds of things. And we might cover some of that. But what I really want to do is go through the questions that our members actually have and answer some of them live for people who have not had their questions yet answered inside the community. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay. This first question. I'm starting to contribute to a Roth IRA. This is from Aaron, but it's likely not wise to let it sit in cash. Any recommendations for what to invest into? Fidelity has a lot of options, but all of them seem to be available. To invest in some of them, you need a certain amount to invest. Help, please. Okay, so very good question. And Aaron is absolutely correct that having that money sit in cash is a really, really, really bad idea. You might as well have that money doing nothing for you, honestly, and you're totally negating the really powerful benefit that happens when you truly invest inside a Roth IRA and get the benefit of the compounding returns you would receive from equity-based or stock-based investments in that account versus cash with nothing. It's actually a really common mistake. So I'm glad Aaron realized pretty early on, oops, I'm doing this, because we have caught people who have had money in their Roth IRA that hasn't been invested unbeknownst to them for some time. Actually, we just had a client inside our personalized coaching program who we discovered that she had like almost 40 grand inside her Roth IRA and all of it was in cash. She just didn't know. And because most of the time when you invest in a 401k, for example, even if you don't go in and pick your investments, the way that the account itself is structured, it will auto invest on your behalf. So you don't have to know that part, right? But with a Roth IRA or really any investment account outside of the workplace, you do in fact have to go in and select a fund to invest. So we never ever tell people, hey, go buy this stock, this fund, or whatever. That is illegal. What we do is educate people on what the different style of funds are, how to figure out what asset allocation looks like, and make their own informed decisions. And so I can never say, hey, go invest in this fund inside your Roth IRA. But a lot of people will first figure out, hey, what's my goal asset allocation across all accounts before choosing investments inside any particular account type, which is the correct way to approach it. So before you can say, hey, what do I invest in my Roth IRA? You have to first ask the correct question. That's not the correct question. The correct question is, what is my asset allocation that I'm going for across all of my accounts? And then once I've determined that, what do I have available to me elsewhere or already invested elsewhere? And then what do I have available to me inside my Roth IRA? And then, okay, let me use some tax location principles to figure out, are these good investments inside a Roth IRA versus a brokerage, or et cetera. And so there's a cadence to actually making this decision well that involves a lot more than just looking at this individual account. Now, from the perspective of, hey, some of these funds have minimum dollar amounts to invest in that I don't meet, in that situation, you can almost always Google what is the ETF equivalent of this index fund with an account minimum or a minimum investment that I don't have. And the ETF version will not have that account or that investment minimum. And so you can pretty easily escape that without having to worry about the index fund minimum investment. All right, let's see what we got. What else we got here? Okay. Here we go. This is more of a comment versus a question, but Eric said, I have a 1099 side hustle. First off, good for you. Love it. But I get slammed with taxes. Yeah, you will. Open up a SEP IRA to contribute the max employer contribution, helping me to invest for retirement and decrease my taxable income. This is very smart. Investing, first off, anytime you have self-employed income, it increases the accounts that you have available to you to invest in, which is really nice. And you can get savvy and you can layer these accounts on top of what you already have from your employer W-2 job. Now, I will throw out one caveat here. I like solo 401ks a little bit better than SEP IRAs. For one, although if you structure it this way, it depends on how you do it, right? You can do the solo 401k operates pretty similarly to how like a 401k would it work. You can do employee contributions up to 23,500. Those can often be traditional or Roth. You can do employer contributions, typically traditional, up to 25% of gross wages. Wages related to the self-employed income, not all gross wages. Remembering that the 23.5 is the annual cap for your employee contributions to all 401ks. So if you're maxing out the employee contribution at work, well, then you can't actually make employee contributions to the solo 401, but you can make employer. If you're doing that, you're likely making traditional contributions and actually lowering your current year tax bill. If you're not doing that and you're making those as Roth, well, then, you can put more money into the Roth bucket, which personally, because of my own political forecasting, I'm in favor of that. Now, here's why I really like them better. If you ever decide to self-manage the account, or self-direct the account, I should say, and utilize a solo 401k to buy real estate, for example, any leveraged asset, there's an extra tax that happens when you utilize debt inside of a self-directed IRA that doesn't exist inside a solo 401k. And so if you're never going to do anything fancy like that, it might not matter as much. But if you are, the solo 401k is slightly superior. And it's honestly really easy from a compliance standpoint, unless you have, I think it's 250,000 in the account. So throwing that out, but great thing to do if you have 1099 income, you can get pretty savvy and increase your tax advantage investing over what a standard just W-2 employee might have. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay. And there's a lot of different stuff in here. I want to make sure we get stuff that's applicable. Let's look at this question from Adrian. I have money in my Roth IRA. I'm worried I'm going to be over in the income limit for this year. So I was thinking about doing a backdoor Roth IRA. Do I need to talk to a CPA first? Do I need to open the back door now? Do I just wait? I don't want to miss out. I don't want to mess up my taxes. Okay, so great question. The trick here is to recognize whether or not you have other IRA balances. Because if you do have other IRA balances, like SEP IRA, traditional IRA, rollover IRA, etc., then you fall under what's called the pro rata rule. And that is going to really complicate the tax scenario. And I would not execute this without talking to your CPA first to figure out some of the tax pieces. So if you have those other IRA balances, then yeah, you probably should chat with them. Now, there's ways to get rid of them. Of course, you can sometimes, not always, a lot of times, roll those old IRAs into like your current employer 401k, for example. Downside is that you probably increase your investing fees and reduce your access to funds, but you can do that. So you can execute a backdoor Roth IRA. There are ways, but you don't need a CPA to execute a backdoor Roth IRA. If you have no other IRA balances, it's actually relatively simple to do. You can just kind of walk through the process, is ensuring that Form 8606 gets filed with your tax return saying, hey, I made this non-deductible IRA contribution, which I subsequently converted. Now, in order for all the tax forms to be easy to follow, I think it's easiest if you're not using a CPA to file your tax return, if you execute the contribution and the conversion in the same year. And so if you're making contributions in the January 1 to April 15th window for the year prior, and then you're doing your conversion in that same year, the conversion always goes into the year in which it actually occurred. I think it's if you're going to try and file your taxes on your own while doing a backdoor Roth IRA, I would probably just execute it all in the same calendar year to make your life simple. But if you have a CPA, maybe it won't matter and you'll be fine to do it that way regardless. This is interesting. So I'm gonna just kind of go through some of these things. There's a people posting a bunch just in the last couple of days about their biggest challenges that they've faced for 2025 so far with money. Let's talk about them. I don't know how to say this. Shala, I'm not sure. My biggest challenge is that with so much information out there, I'm not sure what's the right fit for me. How do I can invest smart and save? I'm in my 50s. I'm a recent widow. I have 2 girls at home. I have money. I need to enjoy money, enjoy life while investing and helping my girls. First off, I'm incredibly sorry that you are a recent widow. There's obviously so many life implications to that, and the grief piece, that the financial stuff often I'm sure just feels like total back burner, and I really can't imagine that. But from a money standpoint, at this point, you do have to like really sit down when you're in that last decade and a half of investing window, sit down and go like, what do I need? What's my real true goal nest egg? And in that demographic, I probably would actually figure out what my social security um, payments would be and adjust the nest egg goal accordingly. With someone like in your 20s, I don't always do that because I think it's really hard to predict what Social Security will actually look like in 40 years. But if it's 15 years, I think it's possible to actually go through, pull your Social Security statement, see what that will be, calculate if you have any pensions coming in, calculate Social Security payments regarding your spouse, like all those other things, and then go, okay, what's left? What do I need? And you may realize, hey, I'm totally on track. Especially if there was some type of insurance payout, a life insurance payout that you were able to invest as well. You might go, hey, I'm totally on track. Or you might sit back and go, shoot, I've got to play some catch up. And I'm not going to be able to get by investing 20% of my income. I'm going to have to kick it up to 30% or 32% in order to get where I need to go. But the important thing is to try to figure that out as soon as you can, because the longer that you wait, the more difficult it becomes. The nature of money is that your time horizon kind of becomes a cheat code. So the younger you are, the more wiggle room you have. And when you get into your 30s, 40s, and 50s, that kind of goes down and down and down. So I would really dive in to figuring out that math as soon as you can to make sure that you can absolutely optimize the next 15 years. Okay. Biggest challenge has been not sticking to our eating out or restaurant budget. Yeah, amen. Mine too. It's funny. A lot of people are saying their biggest money challenges are unexpected expenses with various things. But I will say, like Stephanie specifically mentioned, also, like, even despite these extra expenses, I have automatic deposits to my emergency fund, my Roth, and my sinking funds. And so even though like we're paying for this extra stuff, still winning with money, which is really, really cool. Let me share some of these money wins. Dana said her money win from Q1's paying down credit card debt aggressively, one step closer to getting out of debt and being able to participate in the program. I love it. So the program she's referencing is our coaching program, which is really focused on aggressive wealth building. And we have people in that program that have $500,000 of student loan debt or $0 of student loan debt and everything in between. But moderate interest rate debt by itself carries its own strategy, right? Especially when we're talking about federal student loans, there's so many levers to pull, so many different ways to handle it. And you can absolutely and really should simultaneously build wealth as you do it. And so you can totally dive into investing and do all that stuff with student loan debt, even student loan debt at the wazoo, right? Credit card debt is pretty different by the nature of it. Of course, you're paying really high interest rates. And so what happens is the math doesn't support simultaneously investing while clearing it. For example, if you have credit card debt at 27%, 30%, 32%, The reality is you're not going to be able to exceed those returns in the stock market. And so, just from a straight math standpoint, like no opinions aside, if you don't actually focus on clearing the debt as quickly as possible, you end up at a net loss because you split focus into investing, but you don't earn enough to overcome the interest over here from the credit card debt. And so that is priority number one. And it is a beast to overcome. I mean, I just won't deny it. I've talked to medical professionals with no credit card debt, talked to medical professionals with one or 2,000. I've talked to medical professionals with $70,000 in credit card debt. And I think that happens from a variety of reasons, right? I think the most common ones are major life things, divorce, medical bills. Sometimes it is just spending out of control, but in my experience, that seems to be less common with the really big credit card debt numbers. But I mean, I actually talked to, I think she was a nurse practitioner who she was like the first in her family to go to college, and she just didn't know about the student loan structure. And she put all of her tuition on credit cards because she didn't know that student loans have way better interest rates. And that's what she had easy access to. That's what she knew about. And so it's like these things happen, right? People will end up in these really tough positions. And the only way to clear it is to Dave Ramsey it, to be frank. And I will be pretty vocal that if you're a medical professional and you have 100 grand in student loan debt, 200 grand in student loan debt, the Dave Ramsey plan will hurt you if you don't invest as you deal with that. But if we're talking about credit card debt, that's the plan. That's the way. That's the path. It is, as he says, right? Beans and rice. You don't see the inside of a restaurant. Like it's not the time to travel. It's the time to work and pay it off. And it's not fun. People don't want to do it. But once you overcome it, you have all these options available to you, and you don't until you overcome that battle. And so, if that's you, if you're facing credit card debt, I do have a whole video specifically dedicated to that. I'll see maybe if the team, I don't know if if you're on here, if you can just drop the link to that, how to clear credit card debt video in the chat, that would be super helpful. Mm. But that video is step by step how to set up your budget, how to approach it, how to get aggressive with it so that you can get done with it. Because it's really tough if you take a long time to do that to then get caught up on the wealth building side. All right. Jessica's money one, and I love this one. Jessica's a clinical pharmacist, married to a PT, but they're investing in 401ks, taxable brokerage, HSAs. They got 529s rolling. They're doing the backdoor Roth IRA for the first time this year, and really layering on the tax diversified investing system. And I responded to Jessica and she said, oh yeah, it's been kind of boring. Everything's automated for us. And I said, that's when you know you're really winning, when everything is boring and you're just winning on default without having to do that much. All right, cool. So, here we got some really good stuff here. Adrian Wolf, Q1 goal was hitting 100K invested and achieved it. So exciting. Adrian actually was inside of our mentorship program, absolutely crushed it. Carrie's paid on credit card debt aggressively. Excellent, excellent. Also said the same thing, getting ready to participate in the program. This is someone else's comment, but it's my exact same goal. I love it. Such a battle to overcome. Nicole is actually really doing very well. We're going to feature her in a success interview of an example coming up of medical professionals who have just really crushed the wealth building process. And so she said, locked and loaded, fully did my backdoor Roth IRA, hired a real tax person. Excited and nervous. Hopefully they can save me some money in taxes. Yeah. It's interesting. The tax piece, I think a lot of medical professionals, that's something they're really focused on, is saving money in taxes because of the nature of the high tax bills that a lot of us face. But it's hard as a straight W-2er to actually move the needle. I mean, you can do some things, of course. Some tax advantage investing does help in that regard. But if you want to really move the tax needle, You need to start a business. You need to get 1099 income. You need to invest in real estate, or do some other things that either require, well, I guess technically they both require ownership. That's the thing, right? Um, and those things can really move the tax needle quite a bit. There are a couple of things you can invest in from an alternative standpoint that will move the tax needle too, but the most common are things like the short-term rental tax loophole for medical professionals, or again, starting a business, leveraging increasing deductions, and the bonuses that are available from the tax code standpoint for people who are business owners. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're like, how do I save money on taxes? And you don't want to just save a couple $1,000, you want to save like 50,000 bucks, you're going to have to reframe your reference point, shift to an ownership mentality, ownership of either business or income producing assets, because that's the way to do it. We've saved a ton of money using the short-term rental tax loophole and taxes. I'd have to go back and look, but somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 so far. Probably close to 80. I don't know. A lot. That's a lot of money to save on taxes. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay. Aaron, I'm new. Fraud scam in 2022. Lost everything and incurred a bunch of debt. Hoping to be debt free except for student loans mid 2025. That's so exciting. Couple leftover credit cards. Make sure I have a decent savings. I'm trying to increase retirement. Let's see. For student loans, my work is giving me a stipend that covers the payment. I'm contributing 11% to my workplace and retirement account, but I lost a huge chunk from the scam and now I'm down to 35K. Tiny amount is invested into a couple cherry pick spots, one REIT. Any thoughts? Stocks, real estate. I don't have the money to buy a property. Okay. Let me think how I would structure this in general. There's a comment of couple leftover credit card debts will be paid off mid 2025. That I would clear immediately, and I wouldn't probably do much else until that was taken care of, with the exception of I would take a look at the asset allocation inside that investment account that you have, and I think is an employer 401k or 403b or something, and really think about risk mitigation, because having the small investments that you have in individual stocks is the highest risk way to invest. I would be in diversified, low cost, very broad based index funds or ETFs to minimize your investing risk and volatility. And that I would probably take care of pretty quickly, because there's going to be no capital gains or consequences for selling and repurchasing inside that employer based account, if that's in fact what it is. If it's a taxable brokerage, it's a different story. I would do those two things first: credit card debt, and address the risk that you have right now inside the investments that you currently have. But Aaron, once you're past that, it sounds like you have a forgiveness plan in play for the student loan piece, which is excellent. You're going to be all in on investing. And so that's going to be the thing that takes you from where you are to comfortable retirement. The idea of saying, hey, I'm going to invest 20% of my gross income, it's probably not going to work here. Aaron, you did not say that your exact age, but from what you're describing, it sounds like you had built yourself up, you had this huge setback, and now you're starting again. And so I doubt 20% gross will cover it. You're probably going to have to be higher than that. Now, I would start by investing in tax advantaged accounts in, again, low cost index funds or ETFs. I would not add real estate or any additional leverage to the situation until you're in a position where you feel really strong and confident. You have at least multi six figures invested, you have your emergency fund in place, credit card debt is gone. Then, if you want to add real estate to the mix, I think it's a reasonable conversation. But before then, it would be adding more risk than I would be comfortable with if I woke up in your shoes. That's how I would approach it. I hope that helps. Okay, let's go back. All right, the last thing I wanted to share. So today's post in the challenge was, hey, are you on track to hit your 2025 financial goals? Which, by the way, should mean you're 25% of the way. Yeah, most of these goals are quantitative money goals, meaning, hey, I want to hit this number, savings, invested, paid off, whatever. which means simple math, you should be 25%, assuming you don't have a widely variable income. So I'm curious what people are saying here. Dana said, I'm 10% of the way there, doing a combo of credit card debt and building up savings. Justina said, oh man, they're crushing it. 2025 goals, 6 months emergency fund, check. Max out 401k, on track to do it. Justina's working on solo 401k for herself. Husband's got the traditional. And then max out their backdoor Roth IRAs in progress. Their goal for this year is to hit 250k invested, which is awesome. And really one of those types of milestones that will allow you to start to feel like, wow, my money is actually earning me money. And I'm starting to see the benefits of my investing. Eric said, doing well, need to put together a death binder. Yeah, I love that term. I have a whole bunch of content on that. We can share that too, but that is like so, so undervalued. People having a true, genuine estate plan in place, all the documents in place, all the account stuffs together, all the insurance policies are together, and everything is lined up so that if you were to just fall off the face of the earth tomorrow, your family would be 100% set, cared for, obviously grieving, but they would have no financial concerns whatsoever because you have everything laid out. That is something that most people do by the time they're older. Although, like, one of my favorite stories ever from work is I remember the gentleman came in with a perforated viscus. He was like 92 and he was going emergently to the OR, and I was admitting him to the critical care service and asking him his code status. And he's like, I'm not ready to make myself a DNR yet. I haven't figured out my will yet. Who's going to take my house? Like, buddy, you're 92. What do you mean you haven't figured out your estate plan yet? But some people wait forever and ever and ever to do it. And I think what's most important is to, the second you have anyone financially depending on you, to do it. Like, even if you're 25, even if you're 32, if you have people that depend on your financial life, this should be in place. And actually, we just had a guest speaker last night, Cassandra Smalley. She's a CFP CFA, and she was telling us, even outside of her own client exposure, her own very good friend had her spouse unexpectedly die at 34 years old, and they had a 2-year-old. So, like, we know these things happen, guys. We work in medicine, but we tend to think it will never happen to us. And so that is one of those tasks that should be always like up on the list, right? I realize it's never urgent, but it should always be important, and you've got to get it done. Like, I get it. We're exhausted all the time. Like, we have small children, businesses, jobs, lives, like things get crazy, but you have to sit down. I mean, we literally just did this last week, sat down and we're like, we need to update this binder. We need to get these accounts up to date again. Like, this is an annual task. It has to be done. And we do it every single year, even though it never fits into the schedule, because it's important. And the year we don't do it will be the year that it's needed. And, we will have failed. So make sure to very intentionally schedule that. No matter if you have assets or not, you should do it. But the more that you build wealth, the more that you generate assets for yourself, the more important it is to really steward that well and make sure that you have a plan in place. So the death binder, way up there. All right. Well, we're just about out of time. Honestly, it's been a really fun week in the community, just seeing what people have done in terms of their goals, their challenges, and what they're after. So even if you're not in the community that you can join now, participate in the last few days of the challenge. It's exciting to just be around other people who are really succeeding with money, working towards their goals, actually like making tangible progress and succeeding. So much of success financially and in any area is driven by who's in your inner circle. So we built this whole community to give you a circle of people who are succeeding. So even if your own colleagues aren't, even if your own friends aren't, you can find somebody that is and go, hey, how'd you do that? That's what we're about. So, all right. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you inside the community.